Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Handmade by Ying with Donna. We're here today working on the legit kit box of the month. And it's month 2, week 7. This time's flying by, I'll tell you. So let's get busy sewing. So this month we have 2 pieces that we'll be joining together. So I'll refer back to our cut guide. B3A is here, and we're going to marry that to B3B. So that's what the cut guide is telling me to do. So I like to refer back to all the details along the way. So I'll get my paper scissors, and what we're going to do is just trim off here, and it's just going to help us streamline. And then I'll cut out this piece. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just a rough cut, because as we're working this block, we'll be trimming it down on that solid black line, the solid gray, I should say. So that's the 2 pieces. So we'll get this out of the way. So I'll take and start with the A block. So what I'm going to do is look for my larger section, and that's number 1, and then we'll pull number 2, and we'll get this block done in a hurry. The first one is right here, and it's chart reuse. I can't say that, so that's okay. So we're going to look for a number, B3A, and it's right here. As you can see, we're working right down through these. And then we're going to use this again for this section. So we're going to mark it off. That way we don't have to keep pulling the chart out. So let me see, B3. So I'm going to, this is the number 1 section, and that's what it's telling me. So I'll look for the number 1. We've got that. So we'll look for the kind of cut it is. And then we're going to look for the other cuts. And we're just going to mark those off. We'll move this little tidbit out of the way. And we'll get our large section cut. So we know where we're going to be cutting on our cut chart. So I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this one while I've got this large section. Now, let me see here. I want to wiggle it down as far as I can. That's the way the cutting guide said, so I want to do it that way. And if you use the cutting guide, it makes your life just a lot simpler because they've already worked out all the numbers and all the cuts for you. So I'll snip this off because we're not going to need it. And that's just going to go into the trash pile. So while I have this color, since I know I'm going to use it again, I'm going to go ahead as per my cut guide, and I'm going to lay it out here, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this one in. So I'm just going to hold it down with my fingers and rough cut it in. And like I said, this is a very rough cut, so I don't lose track of what color this was and what piece I cut for. I'm going to go ahead and just pin it right here at the top because that way it'll stay out of my way. Now I'm going to go to the next color on this. CK is the marking, so that would be my cactus. So we're going to pull out all of this. And as you can see, I only needed this one little tiny corner out of it. Isn't that a big hunk? But I've got all this scrap left over from the other parts. So I don't want to cut into that. I'm just going to bring this little tiny piece and cut it right in there. Didn't make sense for me to waste it. So this was from month 1. And I'll mark my cut guide off because it's correct. I just don't need that piece yet, but somewhere along the way I may. And every project that you use Legit Kit for, keep all of your colors. Because all your labels and all your colors, just because you're finished the project, if you're going to continue with Legit Kits, you'll be able to use these colors all the way through. So I want this to be a little bit straighter. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a shave off. And this was just a big old fussy cut. No magic there. So we'll get this one sewed in. Then we'll trim this little puppy down. Remember, trim those strings. You'll thank me later that you don't have them in. So this block, for all intents purposes, this section is complete. We'll fold this back, give it a little bit of heat love, and then we'll trim this one and set it aside. And I like to trim them as I'm working my blocks, but you do whatever works best for you along the way. And just stay true to your 1/4 of an inch, because when it comes time to join these blocks, you'll be thankful that you did. So this is finished, and now it's out of the way. So we'll get all of these little scraps, because they're no good to us now, and set those aside. So now we're going to come back here, and we're on the larger section. So I'm going to look for KL. And that's my key line. So I'll pull that whole section up. I'm going to look for my cut guide, and I'm going to mark it off. B3B, B3B, and it's right here. So this is the large section that we're going to be cutting. So I can mark that off and lay it aside. We'll unfold this big section, and we'll get busy cutting this puppy out. So, as always, we're going to wiggle it in place. I'm not worried about moving my tag there, because I'm not going to be in that area. So I'll pin it here, and I'll pin in place here, because I don't want them to shift at all. So I'll start over here, and I'm just going to trim up the side. I know I have this section here, but that's okay. We'll get that here in a few minutes. So I come up about a 1/4 of an inch more than what I need. And that's going to help me with my seam allowance on this end of it. And just stay true to your cuts. Fold this up. It's finished now, and I will file that back under KL in my filing system. So we're going to fold this down. Make sure I've got that in where I need it to be. Make sure I've got my 1/4 inch here. And like I said, it's not a perfect at anything. You're just going to trim them in. I'm going to look for my next one, and that is LM. So we'll go through the filing system and look for the color lime. So now we're going to look for B3B on this color chart, B3B, and it's right here, and it's right here on our cutting chart. So you can see we're going to have one more big section coming out. So I'll slide that out of the way, and you're going to want to be meticulous, because that looks like it's a pretty big piece. So we're going to lay this down just like this. We'll bring it back up just a smidge, so it's in place to where I think it should be. And I'm going to cut right here. And I'm going to fold it back, and I'm going to keep my hand on this, because what I'm going to do is fold it right here so that I have a little bit of a cut line, like a cut guide per se. There's so many different methods for doing these, and you just want to make sure you get it right the first time. wiggle it in, and give it a cut. And I've got that little snip right there. So we're going to fold it back up and refile under lime. Chart as well, because I want to keep all of those together. So now I'm flipping this over and I'm going to lay it right here. You're going to watch your sides, because when this unfolds, you want to make sure that you're covering the area that you need to cover. And your fabric is quite stretchy as well, so watch for that. So when it's sewed in and I fold this, I know now I have more than enough. So I'll move my add-a-quarter ruler out of the way, and we're going to slide under, and we're going to just sew this puppy in. Before I go much further down on this end, I want to make sure that my fabric has not moved, and we're going to sew it in. Sew right off the paper here. That's okay. So you're going to trim your threads. Always remember to get those now. We're going to flip it over, and we need to make sure we're coming right up to there. And as you can see, that's more than enough for where I need it to be. And we'll just press it in. Then we're going to trim out. So we're going to fold this down where I sewed off the line. We're just going to make sure that we're hitting that fold line. Lay our add-a-quarter ruler down. You're going to feel it nudge up against it. Then you're going to gently just trim that out. Pull my pin, because remember, we pre-cut this one when we cut the first month. So we're going to lay it down and watch the way that you're doing your block. And remember, when you cut on the bias, it is going to be stretchy. You want to make sure that you test it before you sew it in, and make sure that your block is covered. Sometimes it doesn't look like it's going to work, because you have to come up to this side of it just a smidge. But when you're folding it over, you're in where it needs to be. So we're going to sew this in. Then we're going to get that little tidbit down in the corner, and then we'll marry this block together. Give it a little finger press back, and as you can see, there's little strings along the way. You'll have to just trim those out. And it looks really funny, doesn't it? Looks like it's all messed up. But I'll show you in a few minutes, as soon as we get this last little piece in, that it's not. It just looks funny. So we're going to come over to this corner where we have the HR. We're going to trim this out. So you're going to look for your color, HR. We're going to pull all of the fabric out, because there was fabric from a few projects. And then we're going to look for our code, B3B. B3B is right here. And we're getting this little tiny piece. Isn't that pretty cool, the way they do it? So I can't see cutting big pieces. So we're just going to grab a piece that'll work. No need to waste at all. I'm not even going to press it. And as you can see, there's a little tidbit hanging off from another block that we had did earlier. And that's okay. It's going to be trimmed off. You're going to lay it in. Make sure you have your 1/4 inch. Remember, you're sewing at your 1.5 stitch length. In case I didn't remind you of that in the beginning. You're going to flip it over. We're going to pull the pin. Now it's all in place, and we're going to finger press it back. Everything is covered, and we're going to give it the heat. I also, when I'm joining my blocks, sometimes I'll use the clapper, but I always seal them up with that acorn pin. Makes it come in nice and handy. So now we're going to straighten up our block. And just, you'll see how this whole line right here is going to get nice and dark, and you know you're on it. Then we're going to slide over here. Quite a bit of ucky there, wasn't there? But that's why you're squaring these blocks up and making them look so nice. So now we'll get all of the gunk off the table. See how pretty it turns out? These colors are looking fabulous. So, per the cutting guide, we're going to flip it over. And I'll show you again how I like to do mine. This corner here, and this corner here, you're going to stick a pin in. You're going to do the same right here. If you pin right there, you're not going to have any issues. So we're going to flip it over. And I'm going to line it up. You don't want your paper shifting. You want to make sure you're keeping your fabric all together. Slide my nail under, and I'm going to pin it. And if I've got it lined up, right there it is. It's right where I need it to be. And I'll do the same thing down here. Some of the blocks you'll have a bit of bulk, and that's okay. Yep, that lined up. So I'm just going to keep it pinched. I'm going to flip it over. And we're going to sew this one in. And stay true to your 1/4 inch. It's really important with legit kits. Well, every FPP, but legit kits, they are making it simple and showing you right where you need to sew. Pull your pin out. And this block is now, for all intents and purposes, sewed together. I'm going to pull it back. And we're going to pull this paper off. If I have any problem areas, I'll get my little snippers and pull those out. And it's really, like I said, and I'll say it all the way through the process, you want to get as much of that paper out of that seam because you don't want that mess in there. So now we're going to, I like to give it a little nudge. And then I'll finger press it down just to open that seam up. If you get it right the first time, you don't have to go back and do it. So I've got it, and while I'm working the rest of the seam, I'm going to leave that heat lay right there and let it do the work for me. Use my acorn pin now, and it is not a requirement. I just prefer to use it. Flip it over. I'll have to take that little dog ear off right there. And as you can see, the block lined up perfect. The main thing with legit kit, if you line everything up the first time, you don't have anything coming out. You'll see my points line up here for all of these sections, and it joined in here perfectly. So use your pins. We all don't like to from time to time, but the pinning comes in handy with these kits. So take care, God bless, and I'll see you back for week 8.